Avengers Endgame is the 22nd film set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the end of what is being called the Infinity Saga. The film is likely going to be one of the biggest films ever, with people flocking to see this massive on-screen event. And yet, there's something about it that seems off to me, something that makes me question whether I should be excited for Avengers Endgame or not. Let me explain. Now, let me begin with saying that I am a huge fan of the superhero genre. I have a whole spreadsheet of every DC and Marvel film I've ever seen, so when I'm questioning whether or not I'm actually excited for Avengers Endgame, please understand that that is somewhat confusing to me and everyone else. And instead of talking to someone or putting it in a diary, I decided to do this. Now, let's be honest with ourselves first. Endgame has an incredibly high possibility of being good. Most of the Marvel films have been criticised for being generic or formulaic. However, I don't think the MCU has ever produced a truly bad film. There are some incredibly boring films in the series, and there are some which are just about forgettable. But I don't think any of them have ever strayed into truly being bad. So looking at Kevin Feige's track record of 21 good films, and with MCU favourites Joe and Anthony Russo helming Endgame, you would think this is a good sign that I would be excited for this film. But for some reason, I'm just not. But surely the best kind of hope for a film is when a film could fail, right? Isn't that the whole idea of storytelling? If there's no stakes to anything, then why should I care? I know nothing about the story, and I'm incredibly excited to see where it goes, but if I know that I'm going to enjoy it, then what is there to look forward to? In January of this year, the film Glass, directed by the infamous director M. Night Shyamalan, was released, and I was so excited for that film. As most might know, M. Night Shyamalan has a very spotty track record with his films, some of them being groundbreaking, and others being X-axis breaking. So when it was announced that he was doing a sequel to two of his best films set in the same universe, I was all there for it. And coming off a streak of 2 good films and revisiting the characters of some of his best films, there was a lot of hype around this film's release. The reason I was so excited for Glass was not because I was a huge M. Night Shyamalan fan, it was because I didn't know if it was going to be good or not. As you know, he doesn't have a good track record, so seeing the film was a big gamble. And this is what I think anticipation and excitement is. Not going into something knowing if it's going to be good, but going into something not knowing if it's ever going to work. I think this is why people go into films like Endgame blind. They don't want to see any trailers, so that they have an opinion on them, so that they have no idea what the film's going to be. They avoid all spoiler discussions, all discussions on any topic related to the film, because they don't want to know anything. This is the reason why there's a number of smaller superhero films coming out this year that I'm much more excited for than I am Endgame. Coming up this year, there are a number of smaller superhero films that I am much more excited to see than Endgame. All the films are superhero or comic book based, so they have me hooked on that account, but apart from that, I know almost nothing about each one of them. The first film was the James Gunn produced Brightburn. The first I heard about this film was that at San Diego Comic-Con last year there was going to be a trailer for it released. But after his old tweets came back to haunt him a few days earlier, the panel was cancelled and any James Gunn project was put on hold almost indefinitely. The first trailer released in December of last year, and weirdly, it looks to be an Elseworld-style evil Superman origin movie. Now, this kind of thing happens all the time in comic books, with the Superman archetype being parodied or copied, and then put into a completely different genre or a completely different story. However, this is the first time we've ever seen it done on a big screen superhero film. Then there is the ever-delayed New Mutants, which, as of recording this, Disney has just announced that they will release it theatrically, which is pretty exciting. You might be asking me why I'm excited for this film, and hopefully you'll understand after I read you this short synopsis. From a director known for making the completely fine indie rom-com Struck in Love, and a really good John Green adaptation, The Fault in Our Stars, comes a superhero horror film based on the coming-of-age X-Men comic about young mutants whose mutations are not superpowers, but extremely dangerous and weird. See, that either sounds like it's going to be a massive train wreck or weirdly good. If you want to know the story behind New Mutants, go and look it up for yourselves, or I'll make a video on it, because that is an extremely interesting story, and it's almost probably going to be better than the film. And now for the one I know least about, which is Todd McFarlane's Spawn. If you don't know who Todd McFarlane is, he's the guy who created the character of Spawn in the early 90s at Image Comics. He's never written or directed a feature film before, and only has credits directing late 90s or early 2000s metal and punk music videos. The only two cast members confirmed for the film are Jamie Foxx and Jeremy Renner, both of whom I love. The film is also being produced by Jason Blum, who's known for making small, low-budget horror films. He's credited as a producer on Get Out, Sinister, Insidious, and even Split and Glass, which we talked about earlier. And those are some pretty good films to be attached to. The film might end up getting pushed to 2020 because the film hasn't even started filming yet, so I doubt it's going to meet its release date of the end of this year. But apparently it's still listed as 2019, so I could actually put it on this list. And then of course there is the most controversial comic book film of this year, Joker. Now, Todd Phillips has a wonky track record with some good films here and there in his filmography. The film feels extremely inspired by Martin Scorsese, who was actually attached to produce for a very long time before dropping out for some unknown reason. And with the likes of Joaquin Phoenix, Zazie Bates, and Robert De Niro, the film seems to have an amazing cast to it. I don't think anyone knows what this film is going to be, but I'm going to utter the words I never thought I would say. I'm excited for the standalone Joker origin movie. So what I'm saying is that you should never be excited for big films, right? No, of course that's not what I'm saying. I have midnight tickets for Endgame, for crying out loud. Of course I like big films. What I am trying to say is that maybe perhaps we should all try and take a gamble on smaller, weirder films that are coming out. Now, I know that's nothing new to say, but really, it's true. People do need to start taking more risks at the cinema. Most of the films I've talked about in this video have been written off already, with people just straight up saying that they're useless or bad already, when really we know nothing about them. Now, while none of them are really art house or indie films, they're still fairly big studio films. It's still the studio taking a risk, and it's still the audience taking a risk, because we don't know how this is going to turn out, or if it's been done well. I love the bigger superhero films, but even when they're done well, they can get repetitive and you can get bored of them. Now, I'm not saying I have superhero fatigue, because I'm not at that stage yet, thankfully. But I do think there needs to be smaller, weirder superhero films so that there's a break from the huge releases every 6 months. So Hollywood, if you're listening, please make some weird superhero films. I guarantee you there's an audience for that. Well, there's me at least anyway.